Okay, welcome everybody to ultra processed foods and why they're wrecking our biology. This is a webinar that I've been super excited to teach, and I've done it a couple of times. And actually, this is a second round because I forgot to push record on the live version. So you are getting a special if you are watching this on a replay. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Um, Before we get started, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. So, if you follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you do. I am a nutritional therapist and I am a bit different to a nutritionist because I work with people with multiple health issues. And that might be digestive problems, it might be mental health issues, might be hormone issues and fertility problems. Sometimes blood sugar imbalances as well, lots of other chronic health conditions. So I specialize in functional blood analysis. So I analyze blood tests a little bit differently to most of the conventional healthcare system. And I look at things with a functional lens, looking at things optimally. And also I recognize patterns in people's blood testing to give us a bit more understanding of what's going on in their body. I am also a huge fan of using DNA and looking at epigenetics and how our environment and food impact how we express our genes. So that's a huge thing I do. I also do some hormone testing, sometimes microbiome testing via the stool, oral microbiome, and also the vaginal microbiome, which I find super fascinating because we have trillions of bacteria and other microbes on our bodies, and they live symbiotically with us. What about me? What about my own health problems? So, every single health practitioner in this industry has gone into this industry because they've also had to deal with health problems by themselves, if not for someone that they love very dearly. So, for myself, I had struggled with IBS since my early 20s because I grew up having a wide range of antibiotics, which actually really messed up my gut. For my adulthood, sadly. So it all was triggered in when I was still at university, and I got a gum infection, which led to a root canal, and then I had to take antibiotics, and that messed up my gut. So over the last well over a decade, I've been dealing with IBS, and I go through periods where my gut health is fantastic, and I don't need to do anything to it. I used to bloat like crazy after every single meal, and it was quite difficult. And I couldn't eat things like gluten, dairy, or even eggs, and it was quite difficult. So I had IBS. Currently, as I live in Bali, I have been struggling a little bit with Bali belly. So sometimes you get set back at the times when you least expect it. But that is life, and you just deal with it. Other problems that I've struggled with would be my menstrual cycle and my fertility. Not that I was looking to have children in my 20s at all, but having shorter cycles because I had low progesterone as a result of not ovulating really impacted my life and also increased my rate of my instances of anxiety. I also had anemia. B12 deficiency anemia. I had iron deficiency anemia, which really impacted the way that I had anxiety. I also had a lot of shortness of breath, which really was difficult. And I had that every single day whilst working in London, which was a very high stress environment. And I also had Raynaud's disease, Raynaud's syndrome, since I was at the age of 15, which comes on when you're in cold weather. So if you've never seen it, it's basically where all the blood comes out of your fingers and they go numb, and it can be quite painful and irritating. So that was something that I actually fixed because in my teens and my 20s, it would always be triggered by either cold weather or stress, and it was quite annoying. So yeah, fix that one by looking at my DNA. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And now I see clients all over the world, from the UK to the States and Asia. So, which is great because I love doing things remote. I love meeting people from all sorts of places across the world, and it just gives me life. So, yeah, without further ado, that's enough about me. Let's move on. So, we're going to be going through ultra processed foods, and you might have heard that term massively so often lately because it's been so popularized. And there was a book by Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, which became really popular. And actually, it was my favorite book that I read last year. So I totally recommend it. I've got a picture of it later on. If you haven't read it yet, totally read it because it's got so many pieces of interesting information about the food industry, about the ingredients that are in our food hidden and how they impact our biology. So I love that book. I would totally recommend. But I would just like to ask you a question. What do you think a healthy diet looks like to you? And there are no wrong answers because the industry is so divided. You might have noticed, but there are so many people on social media from different places, from different schools of thought in the nutrition industry that think completely different, and they do think that their way is the only way. So, what does a healthy diet look like to you? There are no wrong answers because it really depends on what works for you. Some people thrive on a plant-based diet, some people thrive on an animal-based diet or an omnivorous diet. I like to think that most people thrive on an omnivorous diet, as we have done as humans for hundreds and thousands of years. But yeah, the degrees of plants to animal protein, the ratio really depends on each person and whether you need more of each food group. You might be someone that needs more bread or even carbohydrates, even because carbohydrates is something that you need in order to do, say, for example, endurance sports. And it might be something that really works for you, but other people might not really thrive that much on a high carbohydrate diet. So yeah. There are lots of different people talking about different things on the social media. So you might notice some of these people, you might follow them already. I certainly follow pretty much almost all of them people here. So Jessie, and I can't say her last name for the life of me. She's the glucose goddess. She's had so much popularity because she posts these really great infographics showing her blood sugar balance when she eats certain foods. So she likes to demonstrate the impact of certain carbohydrate heavy foods, such as bread or maybe apples, and then compares it to a situation where she might add some protein to it or fat to help curb the blood sugar response. And I find that really, really helpful. Although she has had some criticism because she brought out a supplement and yeah, that wasn't taken too well with the following. So yeah, let me know what you think about her. You've also got Brian Johnson down below, who is embarking on an incredible journey using himself as a human guinea pig, testing out all of the latest therapies to help him live to, I think he wants to achieve 120, or even he says don't die. He believes that dying is a disease. So anyway, he's vegan by choice, and I respect his choice, and if it's especially if it's an ethical one. But he also takes 100+ supplements, and you have to question whether his diet is really that optimal if he has to take that many supplements. I argue that it's not. So yeah, if you do have to take that many supplements, you have to remember that when you have anything that's going in your body, your liver has to process the substances that you give it. If you are giving it a lot of supplements, the amount of work that your liver needs to do also needs to be optimal. So, but he sounds like he's doing something right because he's sleeping really well. He's got the best sleep score out of anybody on this earth for a very long time. So yeah, we've got him. We've got Tim Spector from Zoe, who says that everybody needs to eat 30 plants a week. I disagree. Not everybody can tolerate 30 plants a week because some people have gut issues, which would mean that fiber from plants really exacerbates their condition. Some people thrive on not having very much fiber at all. So it really depends on person to person. Um, We've also got Dr. Chris in the middle, who wrote the Ultra Processed People book, and I very much agree with him. I do think we should be minimizing the amount of ultra processed foods that we eat and focusing on mostly natural foods. Of course, we can't always avoid having ultra processed foods because there are going to be situations where you haven't got any food to hand and you have to have something. And the best option might be some ultra processed foods. And in that situation, I'd say go for it because eating something is always better than nothing. You've also got Dr. McGregor in the corner. He advocates for a plant-based diet. I don't believe everybody should be on a plant-based diet because I believe a lot of people will struggle on that, and I see that quite a lot in clinic whereby people are quite deficient. So it depends on so many factors. Dr. Stacey Sims, she believes that intermittent fasting is not for everybody and not all women should be doing it because obviously we have um, cycling hormones and men do not. Um, Dr. Michael, oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name, which is really terrible because he recently left us and he's no longer on planet Earth and he's in a much better place. So rest in peace to him. But I've forgotten his last name for the life of me. Anyway, he's remembered for his work around intermittent fasting, which is amazing and has done wonders for so many people. And especially, I do believe men do benefit from intermittent fasting massively, but women, it depends on their cycle. James Smith, a PT, in the corner, who I'm not a big fan of, honestly, because I don't like his energy. So yeah, he's a huge advocate for reducing calories and minimizing using a calorie deficit to get you to lose weight. And I think he's lost the complete point of weight loss and weight in general. I don't think he really truly understands why someone has weight. With weights, it's not as simple as reducing your calories because if everybody starved themselves and reduced the calories, we'd have a lot less obesity in the world, but we don't. It's not just about how much we eat and it's not just about self-control. There are lots of hormones underneath of the bonnet when it comes to weight gain. And I do believe it's a normal biological response to put on weight when you are filled with inflammation. What are the foods that we're eating right now? We have a very ultra processed diet in 2025, and that is what is causing the disconnect between food and our biology, and that's what's causing so many people to become obese. So yes, James, if you're listening to this, I very much doubt he will. Uh, calories is not all everything that there is. So yeah, there's a lot of noise, and it really depends on what works for you. Because as I mentioned, if you're a woman, you have cycling hormones, and it depends on your cycle. It also depends on what your income and your budget is like. Some people in low income households are much more likely to have a high processed diet because it's more convenient, it's much more accessible. And sometimes in areas of the UK and even in the US where it's a lot worse, there are pockets where there is no fresh food to buy at all within a certain radius, which is really terrible. And also organic food. Organic food is fantastic because the level of pesticides and herbicides are far less than if they were on conventionally grown produce. So yeah, it might be quite inaccessible if you don't have a high income for or high budget for food. Where you live as well. I live in Indonesia, so I am lucky to have a lot of sunshine, and I eat as local, eat food that is locally grown as much as I can. I try to avoid imported foods, and I do believe even if you're in Europe or the UK, you need to eat locally because that food has not traveled very far. It's grown according to the season that you're living in. It's appropriate for the season that you're living in and nourishes your body better. So I do believe in eating us locally. Um, DNA is a huge thing that impacts our abilities to process certain nutrients. And it is primarily the reason why not everybody can be on a plant-based diet. So I do a lot of work around epigenetics and nutrigenomics, and that's about how your body uses certain nutrients like vitamin B12, folate, B6, and so on and so forth to help you methylate and make DNA make energy, make your red blood cells, make your hormones, neurotransmitters, everything. And it really depends on how you process your nutrients. And a lot of people struggle with extracting or converting nutrients like vitamin B12, and hence why these people will struggle on a plant-based diet, and they would much be very much more uh, efficient on an animal-based omnivorous diet than others. So yeah, very important to do. So yeah, what are we going to be covering today when it comes to ultra processed food? So I'm going to be talking about how ultra processed food is different from processed foods, and it's not the case that we need to avoid all types of processed foods. I will also be going through the impacts of UPF and the different types of ingredients that might impact our bodies. I'm also going to be showing you everyday UPFs in our supermarkets and giving you some easy swaps. And I'm going to be talking about cooking oils because that is a huge topic that I get asked all the time. And then we're going to do a bit of a Q&A with the questions that I got previously, as this is not live. So yeah, let's go ahead. And if you do listen to this webinar and you want to take a picture, please do tag me on Instagram, and also DM me with any questions that I might not have answered on this recording. Please do send me a DM. I would love to share it with everybody. So ultra processed foods. About 60% of UK diets are made from ultra processed foods. In America, it's 70 to 80% ultra processed foods in people's diets. That is shocking, considering that about 100 years ago, there were no processed foods in our diets. The most processed things might have been cakes or sweets that were handmade, but there weren't going to be any synthetic ingredients in our foods if we lived 100 years ago. So we've got very recognizable foods. We've got protein bars, which are terribly ultra processed. We've got Pringles, which aren't even, you can't even call them potato crisps anymore because and that's why it doesn't have crisps on it doesn't have a description on the tube because it's basically rehydrated potato starch rather than actual potatoes that have been sliced up. So they can't call them crisps anymore. You've got yogurt. Sometimes there are lots of different ingredients in yogurt that make it an ultra processed food. Meal replacements, and oh my gosh, we'll come to Huel because I'll tear it apart later. And lots of drinks from Starbucks, like frappuccinos and things like that. Dunkin' Donuts recently released, or I think someone talked about it on Instagram, but they have a smooth milkshake smoothie type of thing that is the most unhealthy shake that there is on earth, because they calculated the amount of sugar that was in one shake and it worked out to be something like 59 grams of sugar. Let's just let that sit in. 1 tablespoon is about 15 grams of sugar if it's a heaped tablespoon. So you've got, I'm not very good at maths, but you need to times that by 4 in order to get that amount of sugar in that milkshake. Terrible. And this is the book that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Chris Van Tulleken. This is a fantastic book, and I listened to the audio book, and I thought that was really, really fascinating. I couldn't put it down, loved it. So I very much recommend that if you haven't watched it already. So, why is everybody getting so sick? Everybody's getting really sick, and it's chronic diseases have really skyrocketed since the 90s. There's always someone that we know that has diabetes. There's always someone that we know that suffers from obesity. There's always someone that we know that has cancer or an increased risk of cancer, maybe heart disease, maybe even hormone problems. There's lots of problems in today's society that actually our conventional medical system is not equipped to deal with, which is really sad. And so let's ask the question of why is everybody getting so sick? Of course, diet is one thing, and ultra processed foods is very has taken over our diets, but also alcohol consumption. Maybe we're drinking more than ever. Smoking, I would have thought that smoking would have reduced actually, but I mean, alongside the people who are Vaping as well. A lot of people are struggling with their lungs, and vaping is not better than smoking. We've also got more stress in our society. I come from England and I lived in London for a number of years, so I'm very much a dare I say victim of the workplace construct, workplace bullying, and stresses that are involved in Western work culture. So a lot of people are extremely stressed, and that is driving a lot of health problems. So yeah, 70% of chronic diseases are actually caused by lifestyle and diet problems. So actually, it's not your doctor's job to fix everything. They are trained to deal with acute problems. But bless them, they are doing their very best. But actually, a lot of the problems that cause our health problems need to be sorted in our own homes. Yeah, and that's why I do my job. So ultra processed foods, what are they? They are defined as industrial formulations of ingredients derived from foods, not actually foods, but they're altered by chemical processes in a factory with the aim of making the food hyper palatable, so they taste so great and they have a longer shelf life, so they last forever on the shelves, and they're cost effective, they're cheap to produce. So the manufacturers like Nestle, Coca-Cola, Monsanto, give me another food company name. Can't think of one. But anyway, Unilever. These companies, do they really care about nutrient density? Do they care about your health? No, they don't. All they care about is making profit. And how they do that is minimizing the cost of the products that they make, making them super cheap to produce, make them so palatable and tasty so that you become addicted and you constantly crave their foods and you keep coming back to them. So that's what an ultra processed food is. They're not the same as processed foods, and I'll explain the difference. So group 1 of the Nova food classification uh, process, shall I say, as a group 1 is natural foods or minimally processed foods. And that might be an apple, but can also be chopped apple that is put into a plastic bag for you. So yeah, those are unprocessed foods. Second group, it might be culinary ingredients which have been processed in a very minimal way in order to help you make like a dish or something, like a recipe. So that could be olive oil. You've cold pressed fresh olives to make the oil, or honey. You've taken that from the hive, or salt. However, they make salt to go into your cooking. But you have to actually be mindful of different types of salt, because you've got natural sea salt, and then you've got really poor quality salt that might have additives, stabilizers, and things added to it, which might actually make it an ultra processed food. Group 3, processed foods. Now, these are not necessarily bad for you. So things, processes like canning, pickling your vegetables, curing meats and fish, maybe even making your fruit into a jam or a smoothie, or making bread. These are all processes. So even alcohol like wine, beer, they all have to go through a process. So these are processed foods and drinks, and they're not necessarily bad for you. The wine and the beer, debatable. So, and in fact, actually, all alcohol is a toxin, and it's a poison and does impact your body in a negative way. But a little bit here and there is not too bad for you. And it's group 4, the ultra processed foods that we really need to take note of. It will be the Doritos, the Oreo cookies, the Domino's pizza, the ice cream that's lasts in the freezer for months and months and months. Do you know ice cream is supposed to be just milk, cream, egg yolks, sugar, and some flavor? Nowadays, a lot of the ice cream that we have in our supermarkets are full of junk, and I'll show you the ingredients later. Fizzy drinks as well. McDonald's. Have you ever had some McDonald's and felt terrible after eating it? And I certainly do, and I'll explain why. So yeah, here's some examples of processed different types of foods. So naturally, minimally processed foods will be, say, for example, milk. And then you can make that into yogurt by just fermenting it. Actually, that should probably go in the process processed box, but you get my get the idea. Yogurt with fruit compote, minimally processed, that can be a process as well. And then ultra processed might be the Muller Corner yogurts, which I used to love. But you know that they are definitely not healthy yogurts for you. Say, for example, oil. So we're going to go into cooking oils massively. So sunflower seeds make sunflower oil. Um, so you've got sunflower seeds being natural. The oils in sunflower seeds are very healthy for you because they're full of polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. However, when we start to make it into an oil, that can start to become very unhealthy for you and ultra processed. And I'm going to go into the processing later on. If you cold press sunflower seeds and got oil out of that, that would go into group 2. If you further processed it, some people would argue that refined sunflower oil for cooking would go into this box, but actually I believe it's an ultra processed food because of lots. It does go through so many different unnatural processes in order to become the sunflower oil that we see in these big plastic bottles that we'll see later. And then flora margarine. Margarine used to be a health food. And now we are switching back to butter, grass-fed butter, because we know that butter is far better for you than margarine. I'll explain why later. So what are the impacts of ultra-processed foods on our bodies? So as I mentioned, whenever I have a McDonald's, and I don't do that very often. I think the last time I had McDonald's was 2 years ago. And then prior to that, hadn't had McDonald's for another 5 years. Um, I just don't want that going into my body. I felt terrible 2 years ago. It was in Barcelona. There wasn't much to eat at that time of night because I got home very, very late and we just thought we'll just order a McDonald's. And I regretted it so much because it hurt my belly so much. And I got diarrhea the following day. So let me know if you also struggle with ultra processed foods like McDonald's. Because you know what, why do we get digestive issues when we eat ultra processed foods? Because a lot of us get bloated, we always get like constipated or we get diarrhea, we get pain. Why do we get all of this? Because the foods that we're talking about, the ultra processed foods, they contain a lot of ingredients that are not recognizable to our bodies. They're often high in added sugar, and we will see later that the bacteria in our guts love sugar. And what will they do? They will just ferment the sugar. It's almost like making beer in your belly, and that will make gas production. And that gas causes you to bloat and makes you windy and causes you pain. So there's lots of problems there. Um, there's lots of ingredients in cereal. So I don't know if you followed in America, there was a huge campaign led by the Food Babe to boycott Kellogg's. So Kellogg's, the maker of various cereals, they make a much cleaner version for countries like the UK and across Europe, but in their own country, in America, they use all sorts of very carcinogenic, and the carcinogenic means cancer causing food dyes like red 40. And these food dyes have been linked to various health problems, including ADHD. And there's good research on it. Yet they refuse to change their formulations of cereal for their American consumers. And bearing in mind, it's mostly children who eat these foods. Yet they make a much cleaner product in other countries. So it's mad, isn't it? How these big food companies have so much impact on our health. Other things, obesity is so common nowadays. It's especially in America and the UK and Australia, obesity is so common. And really, it does correlate with the intake of ultra processed foods. And I do find that liquid calories are probably the worst things that people can have because you don't even realize that you're drinking that much sugar. So yeah, let's go through some of the changes to our physiology. So I just mentioned sugar and how bacteria loves to feed on sugar in our gut. So the more that sugar that they eat, the more they overgrow, and the more gas they make from fermentation, and that causes you to be windy and bloaty and uncomfortable. But then in the meantime, you get more cravings for sugar because sugar acts on your dopamine receptors in your brain, and it makes you think, oh, I really want some more, because we are designed to seek foods that are nutrient dense or energy dense so that we can make energy, right? But the problem is we never had sugar to this degree um, prior to the introduction of ultra processed foods. Yes, sugar has been around for thousands of years, but we never ate it to this degree. When you bake cookies by yourself at home, you might be able to eat a couple and you can stop, right? Because your body will be like, okay, I've had enough, generally. But if you had a packet of Maryland cookies or Oreos, how difficult is it to stop eating at one or two cookies? It's hard, isn't it? So the ingredients in these cookies from the ultra processed foods, they are so much more hyper palatable. It's hard to stop eating because the food scientists that work for these companies like Mondelez and Nestle and whoever, um, they they have designed foods to be super palatable, so addictive, and you just literally can't stop eating them. All the while, if you're eating lots and lots of sugar over a very long over periods of time where you constantly spike your blood sugar, that can cause blood sugar imbalance and therefore increases of increased risk of prediabetes or insulin resistance, and that can cause damage to your blood vessels and all sorts of other problems. So sugar is often hidden as well. So if you can see here with Muller Light yogurt, they've not actually added any sugar. They've added sweetener, so aspartame, but no actual sugar. So that's why they can say, oh, this is light, but not true, because they've actually added starch. So starch is basically a simple carbohydrate, which is usually added to foods like yogurt and custard and sauces to thicken it. I use cornstarch in my cooking in minimal amounts when I want to make a sauce. So they use it quite regularly in ultra processed foods to not only change the texture of your foods, but also increase the shelf life. So if I explain here, starch is not a complex carbohydrate, but you could argue it is because it's more than one molecule of sugar. It's a chain of sugars. But if you say, for example, put a high starch food in your mouth, such as white bread, and just held it in your mouth for a few seconds, you can see eventually that it causes it to taste sweet, right? Your enzymes in your saliva will break it down, and then eventually it tastes sweet. And that's because your enzymes will break it down to make it into simple sugar. So even though they haven't added any sugar to this yogurt, as soon as you eat your modified maize starch, that will break down into simple sugar, and you will absorb sugar into your bloodstream quite quickly. So yeah, same again with your custard. Emulsifiers. So emulsifiers are a chemical which helps to keep oil and water together. So this is used in lots of different products. So it actually helps to stop things from separating. If you've made your own gravy at home, you'll find that sometimes your gravy separates and the oil goes to the top, which is quite normal. Eggs are a natural emulsifier, and that helps to stop mayonnaise from separating. So not all emulsifiers are bad for you. It's the synthetic emulsifiers we actually have to look out for, because not only do they help us keep our food together and increase the shelf life, but they also act like fairy liquid for your gut, which that's an analogy I like. So for example, if you imagine you're washing your dishes with fairy liquid, you're washing away the dirt on your plates. That fairy liquid is an emulsifier because it binds to the bacteria, binds to the food and the oils on your plates, and gets rid of it and rinses away. That actually happens in your gut, especially if your diet is full of ultra processed foods that contain artificial emulsifiers, because the emulsifiers also bind to the bacteria in your gut and then can wash them away. You have trillions and trillions of bacteria in your gut, and a lot of them are helpful and healthy for you. A lot of them help you digest your food. A lot of them help you maintain your immune system. So when you have a diet that's full of ultra processed foods, your gut biochemistry can change massively, and you are at risk of more digestive issues. So that's how it changes our gut health. And I will talk about seed oils, but I'm going to do that later when we do the seed oil section. So actually, I put this picture in. Sorry to Dr. Sarah Berry, because this isn't very flattering. But she recently did a podcast with Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO about nutrition. So she did actually mention a lot of other topics in nutrition that I do agree with. It's not just this topic that she talked about. So she says that seed oils are not toxic. She was quoting someone there. She's saying that seed oils, like vegetable oils and sunflower oils, are not toxic and they're perfectly fine for you, and you can eat as much as you can and you will have no problems. Very much disagree, but we will go on to that very soon. So ultra processed foods are super addictive. So Pringles, if you remember the slogan, once you pop, you can't stop, it will show your age. So I remember this very much so because it was a very big slogan back in the 90s when Pringles were very popular. So as I said earlier, they can't be called potato chips because they're not chips. They're basically dehydrated potato powder reformulated into that specific shape. So they've actually been so clever to engineer crisp or potato, whatever it is, to be super, super addictive. And the reason why they've done that is because they've shaped the actual crisp to fit your tongue perfectly. So the flavors can touch every single part of your tongue. How clever is that? They are super tasty. But that not only that, they've also included various ingredients that make it super addictive. So they've got flavor enhancers like MSG, monosodium glutamate. There's a lot of debate about whether MSG is good for you or not. I don't believe it is. First point being, I don't, from a foodie perspective as well, I don't think MSG is good for you or a good thing to add to your food, because I believe it's like doping in the Olympics. If you have to add a flavor enhancer to your food to make it taste good, you're not very good at cooking anyway, are you? So I don't believe anyone should be using MSG. If you and people argue that it occurs naturally, and no, it doesn't. Monosodium glutamate is extracted from seaweed, but not it doesn't occur naturally in its current form. If you've ever seen monosodium glutamate, it looks like meth crystals. Not that I know what meth crystals look like. I presume it looks like that. It looks like crystals, and and they enhance the flavor of your food. That's how ultra processed foods become so addictive. Same with these noodles. Instant noodles are a huge thing in Asia, like in Indonesia or China and Hong Kong, where my family are from. Instant noodles are basically a staple food. But why do we love it so much? Because it has flavor enhancers in it. Does this look nutritionally complete at all? Does this look nutritionally helpful to your body? No, it doesn't. There's barely any nutrition in any of these foods. Yet they taste hyper palatable. They trick your body into thinking that this is going to be really great for us, but actually they don't. The more you eat these sorts of foods, the more hungry you'll become because your body actually craves nutrients like protein, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats. It also craves vitamins and minerals. Without these nutrients, your body can't function. But when we eat these ultra processed foods, our bodies are tricked into thinking that we need this instead of actual food. So we're constantly hungry, we're constantly addicted to foods, and we're constantly seeking more foods, but we're not smart enough to realize actually this is not good for us. What we should be having is a steak, for instance, or a fillet of a salmon, or some vegetables and fruits, right? So yeah, watch out for these ingredients. I've highlighted these flavor enhancers in the same color as they are in numbers. You might notice that some foods have E numbers, and they are codes for certain additives. And that's how manufacturers of food products can get away with hiding certain ingredients so you don't know. And I mentioned Maryland cookies. Why can't we just stop at 2 cookies? Why do we have to eat the entire pack? And that's because that the cookies are full of ingredients that you wouldn't usually put into your cookies if you were to bake them at home. So of course we've got wheat, normal, chocolate chips, fine. We've also got extra very cheap types of fat. We've got some emulsifiers to ensure that they stay on your shelves for ages. You've got some more palm oil there, partially inverted sugar syrup on top of the sugar that you're getting here, here, and here. So it's very, very sweet, and these foods last for ages on your shelves. Okay. And yeah, can't be very good for you. So is it the ingredients in foods? I let's compare cream. So I actually did not know that Elmley double cream was not cream until a few years ago, because in my family we've had, my mum has made homemade birthday cakes for since I was a baby. So every single birthday we've had Elmley, and I never ever looked at the ingredients. I thought it was just double cream, but it's not. It is not double cream. It's buttermilk mostly, but then it has lots of vegetable oils in there. It has stabilizers, emulsifiers, various gums to keep the shelf life really long. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, but double cream, which is just cream, doesn't last that long in the fridge. It might last maybe 3 days once you've opened it. But Elmley lasts for over a week and it doesn't separate, it doesn't curdle, it doesn't form water. So it's very much something that lasts on the fridge in the fridge a very long time, or even on even at room temperature. And the reason being that that because it doesn't spoil, and double cream would spoil because it would go sour, but Elmley doesn't, is because of all of these ingredients. So I always say if bacteria doesn't want to eat it and consume the food that you've got, then it's no good for you either, right? If you say, for example, put some ultra processed foods, I know that's a really bad example because some I was going to say, I was going to suggest if you try to feed a dog certain like to one of the two, I'd guarantee they would go for the double cream. But who knows actually, because in the UK a lot of dogs would just eat anything. Over here in Bali, a lot of the dogs don't even touch ultra processed foods. They will only eat meat, what they're naturally evolved to eat, and they won't even touch the ultra processed foods, which says a lot about um all of these ultra processed foods. Bread. Bread is just hiding in plain sight. So bread should actually be just water, flour, and salt, sometimes not even yeast. And that's how you make proper bread. This is a loaf of sourdough bread, and if you have never tried sourdough bread, you guys need to live. It tastes so good. Sourdough bread is like really nice and has lots of air pockets. It's so fragrant. There's so many, it's so has a depth of flavor. It's delicious, absolutely delicious. But it does go off quicker. It does go harder quicker, and that's how bread has traditionally been made. And it's supposed to go hard and stale after a few days. Kingsmill and Hovis, these are ultra processed breads. You can see that the ingredients list for each of these breads are pretty long, and they last on in your home for, it says 3+ days, but we know Hovis lasts for about a week, maybe more, before they grow mold. So the reason being is because Hovis and Kingsmill have added various ingredients to make sure that the shelf life is prolonged. Vegetable oils. So in ultra processed foods, you will see that there is so much rapeseed oil and palm oil in your ultra processed foods. And arguably, Dr. Sarah Berry in that Diary of CEO podcast said that ultra processed foods are often bad for you because of their saturated fat content, which is actually not very true, because if you look closely at ingredients, a lot of ultra processed foods don't contain any saturated fats. Actually, they contain lots of unsaturated fats, but it's all about how these oils have been made. And I have a whole section on that. But it's also got emulsifiers and preservatives that will help this stay fresh for longer, but at the same time, this will impact your health because your body doesn't recognize some of these preservatives. Calcium propionate will sounds very innocent. So if you just had calcium, that would be fine. But actually, calcium propionate has been found to impact your gut health. So yeah, so I would say go for the sourdough bread and try and skip the supermarket bread. Gluten-free is not that much better. So gluten-free free foods are often very ultra processed. Look at the ingredients here. So when I was a nutritional therapy student, I actually went gluten-free for a number of years because I couldn't tolerate gluten because of my leaky gut. So, and I used to have these products all the time and they were terrible. They didn't even taste good. Um, so yeah, not great. But look at the ingredients. So we've got lots of starch in there. So instead of various flours, they've used starch to make their bread, which makes it actually a very high glycemic food. So this would likely increase your blood sugar quite quickly if you had one of these. It's got rapeseed oil in again, um, humectants, preservatives, natural flavoring, which we'll find actually could be anything. It's the food industry's way of putting all sorts of ingredients in there without telling you. Because what is natural flavor? This free from loaf from Tesco, it's quite poor, but bad for you as well. It sounds good because it's seeded, but it's not really. Humectants, stabilizers, sugar, salt. These are ingredients that shouldn't actually be in bread. This is a brand that I really love. So if you're not celiac disease is an autoimmune condition where you do react to any gluten whatsoever. So if you're not celiac and you can tolerate sourdough bread, I find it such a great alternative to having breads like this. So you might find that gluten upsets your guts by causing bloating, constipation, diarrhea, pain, and that can be the case even if you don't have celiac disease. And that's because of the way wheat has been grown in modern day agriculture. It's not Wheat nowadays is not the same as what we had 1,000 years ago, which was much better tolerated. Nowadays, the wheat that we farm, that we produce, is heavily sprayed with pesticides like glyphosate, and that changes the chemistry of the protein gluten. Gluten is that protein that makes your bread nice and spongy. So for anyone who struggles with that, you might get digestive symptoms, even fatigue and flu-like symptoms might be caused by eating gluten. But also you might find that you don't struggle with gluten so much if you go to Italy, because in Italy they don't spray so many pesticides on their wheat. They have much better quality wheat because they're very passionate about their bread and their pasta. And yeah, often the case is it's fine in Italy, but not so good in the UK or America. So if you are struggling with gluten, you might want to try sourdough because the fermentation process that helps to make the bread actually helps to break down a lot of the gluten. So the level of gluten in sourdough bread is a lot less than yeasted bread, which is about 124,000 parts per million of gluten, but in sourdough bread, it's only around 200 parts per million. So processed meat. So this is a huge topic because the World Health Organization says that all processed meat and red meat is carcinogenic, aka cancer causing. But this is wrong and extremely misleading. If you compare a steak, which is literally just one ingredient, it's beef only, to hot dogs or a saveloy. If you're watching from the UK, you'll know what this is. Or Germany. I think this actually comes from Germany. Um, but yeah, if you ever had one, what even is a saveloy? My brother had one a few months ago when I was home visiting, and I was horrified because the red casing doesn't even feel real. It feels like some sort of plastic paper or something. And it's disgusting because the the ingredients that they use in the Savoy sausage is pork, 36%. We've got mechanically separated chicken, rusk, rusk. We've got flavor enhancers like monosodium glutamate, because God forbid if we ate that on its own without flavor enhancers, what would it taste like? Gosh. And then you've got some sulfites to preserve it. You've got rapeseed oil. You've got, apparently it's beef collagen casing. Doesn't taste like beef. Doesn't feel like beef at all. It feels like plastic, to be honest. And that's what you're eating. And then hot dogs is not very much better. I mean, they've got they've got 65% chicken. A lot of collagen in there, fine. And you also have no idea what type of meat is in there, because do you remember that horse meat scandal we had a few years ago where we had like meatballs, and the IKEA meatballs had horse meat in it and no one even knew? They were like chopping up the poor retired horses and popping them in our processed meat. Not very pleasant at all. Richmond sausages, if you've ever picked up a packet of these, they look grey. When meat looks grey, you know that it's not really very much, there's not much meat in there at all. So, but Richmond sausages, they don't taste that great. If you've had proper sausages, you'll know that these taste awful. They have a small amount of pork in there, only 42%. They've got more rusk in it, more flour. They've got gums, stabilizers, various preservatives. And yes, all of these things keep the sausages lasting on the shelves for longer, but they also make it an ultra processed food. So yes, tell me, do you think that red meat is the same as processed meat? And I don't believe that the steak should even be anywhere near the same category as these three products. So yes, I agree. Processed meat, ultra processed meat, is carcinogenic and is and cancer causing. There is evidence that these foods will cause increased risk of cancer, especially in the colon. But we understand why. We know why, because it's full of rubbish, right? I don't believe steak will ever cause the same issue. And you also have to look at whether if someone does eat a lot of steak, do they also eat a lot of these products as well? Do they also drink a lot? Do they also smoke a lot? Do they also eat a lot of refined sugar? So it's not always as clear cut as saying blanketly that red meat causes X disease. Soup. So I was today years old when I found out that Heinz chicken soup only had 3% chicken. How dare they call it a chicken soup if they've only included 3% chicken? I thought that was mad. That works out about 12 grams chicken. That's like what, a tiny little handful of chicken. Um, I've added flour, which is fine because you need to thicken your soup. It's got some cream in there, flavoring, stabilizers, and all sorts. But if you go to the fridge section and get some fresh soup from Sainsbury's range, you'll find that they add a little bit more chicken at 5%, but they also have lots of sweet corn in that, potato, onions, and actually the rest of the ingredients are really nice. There's bone stock, chicken fat, garlic, parsley, and white pepper. Not a single ultra processed ingredient in here, not even oil, which is very impressive actually. So yes, ultra processed foods are made to prolong the shelf life, so they last on the shelves for God knows how long. They have minimal costs to produce. I mean, how much would this cost to make? You've got a tiny amount of chicken, you've got some cheap oils, you've got some flour, some milk proteins, you've got some stabilizers, and then Bob's your uncle, you've got a tin of canned soup. And Heinz can make plenty of money from you based on their margins. They'll maximize their profits. Ice cream. So ice cream. Yeah, I found it really hilarious that Kelly's Cornish clotted ice cream is called clotted ice cream when they've only got 10% clotted cream in there. How dare they? It's misleading. Misleading to the consumer massively. So they've got milk in it, they've got butter, oil, fine, emulsifiers, because actually with a lot of ice creams, if you made ice cream from scratch, you'll find that they actually crystallize after a while, and the texture of ice cream will go hard, and it's harder to eat. But you'll find that ice creams from the supermarket like that will stay soft for a very long time, and they'll stay in the freezer for ages, months and months and months before they crystallize. So yeah, ultra processed foods. Um, Halo Top, I thought this was a better brand, but when I looked at the ingredients, I was very much mistaken. So yeah, Halo Top is often praised, or it looks healthy because on their packaging it says it's only 370 calories per tub. So often it says high protein on their tubs as well. But if you really look at the ingredients, it's full of unwanted ingredients. It is not just ice cream. It's got skimmed milk, so that reduces the calorie intake. It has sugar in it, of course, because all ice cream has sugar. You've got more glucose fructose syrup down here. So along with the refined sugar, you get even more refined sugar, which is glucose fructose syrup. So that's super, super simple sugar that you will just literally take into your bloodstream. You have emulsifiers, fat reduced cocoa powder. You've got other stabilizers like gums and all sorts. Ben and Jerry's, not much better. A longer ingredients list, in fact. So yeah, you've got vegetable oils in there, more glucose syrup, more gums, carrageenan. Actually, carrageenan is a gum that has been banned from baby food and baby formula because I can't remember why, but there's some sort of health problem that can come from it. And if babies can't have it, why are they including it in adult food? Makes no sense. And the much better alternative is Haagen-Dazs. Haagen-Dazs is actual ice cream. I didn't know this. I don't really like ice cream that much, so I don't really buy it often. But pleasantly surprised that Haagen-Dazs is actually proper ice cream. It has cream in it, fresh cream. It has, and it's actual cream because if you look at these ones, a lot of them don't contain proper cream. So I'm looking at Halo Top, no cream in there. They use proper cream. They use sugar as you would if you're making ice cream. You've got proper flavoring like natural vanilla. You've got real egg yolks. You've got some blueberries, blueberry puree, lemon juice. So processed, but not bad, not ultra processed. But of course, if you're eating a lot of sugary foods, then it would be impacting your health on a negative way. But if you were to choose an ice cream, I would go for this. Margarine. So we touched on this earlier. In the 60s, we were told that all fats are bad, all saturated fats are bad. So Ansel Keys is to blame. He's a scientist who basically says that cholesterol and saturated fats cause heart disease. And here we are in 2025, and heart disease is no lower than it was back then. And why? Because they've got it all wrong. Heart disease is not just about cholesterol. So if you remember, having grown up in the 90s, the butter that we always used was Flora or Utterly Butterly, or I can't believe it's not butter. And none of that was butter, it was all margarine. There's spreads that include hydrogenated plant oils, so that would be the rapeseed oil or sunflower oil, linseed oil. These oils are naturally liquid, but in order to make them solid, you have to put them through a process called hydrogenation. And we know that hydrogenation causes very inflammatory fats called trans fats, and they cause health problems. And nowadays they claim that there is no hydrogenated fats in margarine anymore. But something has to be done to get the oils to become solid. And that process, whatever it is, will cause negative health effects. So I did an experiment the other day whereby I put a spoonful of butter on a plate, and then I put a spoonful of margarine on a plate as well on opposite sides. But I will post the experiment at some point, but I do need to repeat it because a lot of the ants died. And so I don't think, and it all melted and amalgamated, so kind of messed up the experiment. But what happened was that the ants loved the butter. They went to town on the butter so much that a lot of them died and drowned in the butter. Whoops. I didn't mean for that to happen. But then the flora was being touched. They were like, what is this? What's this margarine? And then they were like, don't really like it. And then they kind of strayed away from it. So it tells you a lot. Um, I feel like humans have kind of ignored our natural senses and our natural instincts and trusted brands like Flora and other big food companies to tell us what's good, but we know that that's not good, and we're not really trusting our taste buds anymore. Real butter is just butter and salt. Plant-based food. So don't even get me started. You all know that if you follow me on Instagram that I'm not a big fan of plant-based junk food. It is not healthier for you to have a meat alternative. It is not. If you look at the ingredients, you've got rehydrated, textured soy protein. So that in itself is an ultra processed food because that soy has come, soybeans are naturally great for you, but you have to do so many chemical processes in order to make it look like this. So it's rehydrated and textured soy protein. So imagine all of the chemical processes soy actually has to go through in order to become like this. Alongside that, you've got rapeseed oil. Again, see, if you look at the trend of ultra processed foods, you'll find that rapeseed oil is in everything. It's in every ultra processed food. And so it's not the saturated fat. So rapeseed oil is full of polyunsaturated fats, not saturated fat, right? So ultra processed foods, it's not the saturated fat that is causing health problems. It is the excess levels of ultra processed polyunsaturated fats that are in our ultra processed foods, alongside other ingredients like thickeners, or in plant-based cheeses, you've got more starch involved. You've got to do something to the whole cheese to make coconut oil turn into a block of yellow cheese looking food. If you've ever had plant-based cheese, it doesn't really melt right. It kind of tastes like cheese, and then it also never goes off. If you've ever noticed, it just looks like rubber and sits in your fridge forever. So again, remember, if bacteria doesn't want to touch it, then neither should you, because that shows that it's not food. This ice cream brand, I've had this before. It does not taste good. It's not nice. It tastes really artificial because the first ingredients are water, sugar, glucose syrup, glucose fructose syrup. You don't even have coconut oil as the first ingredient. How is that? This is a concoction of various um chemicals in order to make an ice cream-like product. You've got gums to make it thick. You've got emulsifiers and exhausted vanilla bean pieces. I've never seen exhausted vanilla bean pieces before. But tell me, do you think this is food or not? Rhetorical question. Protein. We have seen so many products on our supermarket shelves that have protein as a marketing ploy, right? So immediately, if you look at a product and it says high in protein, you immediately think that that is good for you and you should be buying it, right? No, let's look a bit closer. So look at this yolk. I've never actually had this. It's a yogurt drink, but 500 grams of yogurt drink, and it says it's a source of protein. It doesn't even tell you that it's high in protein. They haven't got the nerve to do that, but it says it's a source of protein. But let's have a look. So the amount of protein that you get per 100 grams is 3 grams. So times that by 5, that makes 15 grams of protein. That's not that much if you were to consume 500 grams of yogurt. And I'll show you better alternatives for that. But also alongside that, you've got 10.4 grams of sugar per 100 grams. So times that by 5, you've got 53.5 grams of sugar. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot of sugar. That's like 4 tablespoons of sugar in one yogurt drink. How is that a health food? It's not at all. Terrible for you. Okay, so Huel is my is an arch nemesis of mine. I find this so infuriating because it says on their packaging it's 100%, it's 100% nutritionally complete meal. What BS is that? You cannot reduce human nutrition to a multivitamin slash protein shake. You can't say that that is nutritionally complete for a human. You have missed if there are nutritionists that work for Huel and they have designed this product to be nutritionally complete. Oh my God, I would love to give them a shake because that is not true. You cannot reduce human nutrition to that. Nutrition is so complex. Our bodies are so complex. You cannot survive on a meal replacement that is made up of pea protein, tapioca starch. So the carbohydrates that are coming from this meal are starch and also oat flour. That's basically most of the carbs you're getting. It's not complete. They're not complete carbohydrates, like complex carbohydrates. They're very simple sugars, simple carbohydrates, should I say? And then you'll break them down into simple sugars very quickly, and then that can spike your blood sugar. Alongside that, you've got natural flavorings. What is natural flavorings again? Because it could be anything. You've also got thickeners, gums. You've got sweeteners. You've got sucralose. So sucralose is a very poor quality sweetener. They say it doesn't impact your body at all, but actually it's been linked to various problems, like even it's gone out my head again. I think it's been linked to cancer. I can't remember actually. Hold that thought. I'll have to fact check that one. But yes, sucralose is not the best sweetener. They could have used stevia, but stevia is more expensive than sucralose. But obviously, they're another big company, big food company that wants to minimize their costs so that they can maximize their profits. So yes. Also it's got basically vitamins in there, and actually they've used worse quality ingredients in various places. So for example, you've got cyanocobalamin, which is vitamin B12, the cheapest and cheapest form of B12 and poorest quality. You've also got zinc oxide, not a very good quality form of zinc at all. So yeah, they could have done a lot better on that, but no. If anyone tells you, and especially if they're a nutritionist and they say that this is a nutritionally complete meal, please don't listen to them. Protein yogurt. So this yogurt specifically has been marketed to be high protein, but let me tell you, it's not really. So per serving, you've got 15 grams of actually I'll go by the 100 grams so that we can compare with this one. So 9.4 grams of protein per pot of yogurt. And you've got all sorts of other ingredients like modified starch. You've got various flavors. You've got some vitamins as well. If you're eating a nutritionally complete diet, you wouldn't really need extra vitamins, especially synthetic folic acid, which is a synthetic form of folate in your food. And a lot of people can't even use folic acid because of genetics. So yes, for £1.25, you're getting 15 grams of protein. Whereas if you went for Faher yogurt, if I'm pronouncing that properly, you've got only yogurt. This is just simple yogurt, nothing else. They haven't even got any sugar in it or starch or anything. It's just pure yogurt. And that gives you 10.3 grams of sugar, so just a bit more than this one. But if you compare if you compare the price points per 100 grams, you can buy that for 58 pence. So that's a lot better value for money, and you're getting a little bit more protein. But let me show you the king of the yogurt section. Biotiful Gut Health. I love this brand. So this is a kefir, which is fermented. It's kind of like yogurt, but I think it's thinner than yogurt, not as thick as yogurt. This has 30 grams of natural protein in a pot of 250 grams. So what's that? That was 160 grams. I'm not very good at maths. So, okay, so you would actually get a lot more protein from this because if you sorry, I'm terrible at maths, 160 times 2, that's 200 and 200, no, 320. Yeah, that's 320. Please, someone correct me on my maths. I was great at science. I'm great at science and great at other things, but absolutely shocking at doing quick maths in my head. Terrible. I'm a millennial. I grew up with calculators. I'm shocking at it. Please do let me know if you relate. So yeah, but it's a little bit more pricey, so probably same. Oh, just a little bit cheaper than the little bit cheaper than Get Pro at 74 pence per 100 grams, but you're getting 30 grams of protein in 250. So you'd have to eat more of this one in order to get the same amount of protein. So yeah, and you also don't get any extra nasties in your kefir. It's literally just fermented cow's milk with good bacteria. Okay, dips. So, sour cream. If you were to get sour cream fresh, you can just get a pot of simple sour cream with no other ingredients for 98p, and you can just buy some chives, chop that up, and mix it together, and you've got sour cream. But if you were to buy a ready-made dip, you're actually getting a very ultra-processed food. So, sour cream and chive in a jar. The first ingredient is water, which fine, okay. Your second ingredient is rapeseed oil. So actually, you're getting a dip full of rapeseed oil, and then you've got sour cream at 7%. You've got some whey powder, double cream at 4%, and a bunch of other ingredients for flavor. But then also you've got preservatives, you've got stabilizers so that they can stay on your shelf for ages. That's an ultra processed food. This one that is found in the fridge section has more milk, more sour cream than that has ever got. But yeah, it's still got rapeseed oil. It's still got corn flour, some vinegar to preserve it. You've got some preservatives in there as well. Whereas this is simply just sour cream and nothing else. So you're far better off spending a few extra minutes to chop up your chives and mixing it in with your sour cream. Next on the list, what's our next slide? Oops, I missed my cursor. Right, next slide. I don't want to go ahead. Let me exit that and rejoin. Reset. Okay, cool. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Let's go back. Okay, so what is natural flavoring? So we've seen this come up on a few lists of ingredients lately. And that basically is the big food industry's easy way of getting through a loophole to hide certain ingredients that you wouldn't even realize. So natural flavoring could be anything. It could be strawberries. It could be essential oils. It could be resins. It could be protein. It could be MSG because MSG technically is natural if because it was derived from seaweed, but it's actually man-made, man-derived from seaweed. You could put gums in there. You could put glucose because glucose is naturally occurring. It's sugar in its simplest form. So natural flavoring could be absolutely anything, and you wouldn't have a clue. And what's the right oil to cook with? Almost done. So I get this question so often. What's the best oil to cook with? And you'll know if you follow me on Instagram, I am not a big fan of vegetable or seed oils, which have been undergone a very extensive industrial process in order to become oils like this. Okay. A bit different to the cold pressed rapeseed oil, and I'll explain why. I believe ghee, beef tallow, coconut oil, these are the best types of oils to cook with because they are saturated and they are stable in when you're cooking with them. So when it's exposed to heat. Smoke point. This is the one thing that people talk about when it comes to cooking oils, and that's not the be all and end all at all. So let me move my screen away. So looking at smoke points, things like avocado oil, canola oil, aka rapeseed oil, is the second one. So people use rapeseed oil and canola oil because it's got a high smoke point, and that's why it's used to deep fry foods all the time. So your fries, your chips, your breaded chicken, fish and chips, anything is fried in rapeseed oil or sunflower oil because it can apparently withstand heat in terms of smoke point. but that doesn't make it healthy for us. Actually, there are so many other factors that we need to consider when it comes to oils, and if we're heating up oils in general, oxidation will happen. A process called lipid peroxidation or oxidation will cause fats to become more inflammatory. So if you walk past a shelf of seed oils in the fridge, what comes to mind? Does that look healthy to you? And I'm sure most of you will say that it doesn't. They're all stored in big plastic bottles, flimsy plastic bottles. They're sold by the masses. Actually, annually, across the globe, we make 590 million tons of seed oils every year. How mad is that? Think about the environmental impact of transporting seeds in order to make this amount of oil. So there was someone who made an Instagram reel who took a handful of seeds and the amount of oil that they yielded, and they tried to make it themselves at home. The amount of oil that they yielded was about that much. Wasn't much at all. So imagine the amount of seeds, the volume of seeds you will need to harvest in order to create tons and tons of oil every single year. It is quite crazy. So yeah, smoke point is not the only factor. And if you compare this to extra virgin olive oil, and the best types of extra virgin olive oil will be the really dark green stuff, which is really spicy and full of flavor. And when it's spicy and full of flavor and rich in color, you'll know that it's high in vitamins E and A and other vitamins as well. And it's very good for your health. And this clearly is a lot healthier than this. So oils, these oils change our physiology. So there are so many reasons why seed oils are not good for you. And actually, the half of the nutrition industry beg to differ. They say this stuff is healthy for you and you can eat as much as you like. I think they're deluded. So if you basically look at context, what are we doing with these seed oils? We're putting them in every single ultra processed food there is on the planet. We are also deep frying our foods in rapeseed oil. If we heat oils in general to very, very high temperatures, especially when we're deep frying, you cause a lot of lipid peroxidation, and that's what causes the fats to become inflammatory in our bodies. So polyunsaturated fats that are present in seeds like sunflower seeds or rape seeds, they are healthy for you, particularly the sunflower seeds, not so much the rape seeds, but you basically can benefit from those oils if you eat them as seeds because the seeds have the natural shell, the hull that protects the oils inside. Because naturally, if they're growing in a sunflower field whereby there's lots and lots of sunshine, the oils need to be protected from the sun. Sun will the sunlight will oxidize the oils inside the seeds if it were to be opened. Heat will also do the same thing. And there's a big reason why seeds exist in that form, so they don't get oxidized, right? But the thing is, us humans, we've discovered a way of extracting all of these oils to make something like this. And how they do that is they take all these seeds, put them into big factories, and they firstly crush the seeds, and then they extract the oils forcibly with solvents like hexane. Secondly, then they bleach the oils because the oils are a dark brown color. You have to bleach. I don't want any foods in my body that have been bleached. Would you? If, say, for example, I gave you an omelette, but I told you I had bleached it prior, but I removed the bleach, and you shouldn't worry because I removed it and there's no trace of bleach in there. Would you eat that omelette? No. So why do we eat seed oils? And once we've bleached the oil, they actually smell rancid, and they have to in the factories they have to deodorize the oil in order to take that rancid smell away, because no one would actually consume seed oils if we could smell it and smell how bad it is. By the way, this process is very much available on the internet for you to Google and find out about. It's not a secret about how seed oils are made. The manufacturers put it on their website so you can read about it. And that's how now that the oils are so widespread and they're used massively throughout the world because it's a cheap cooking oil. And yes, that creates a lot of omega-6s. So seeds are very high in omega-6. And we know now that human diets are far too high in omega-6 versus omega-3. Omega-3s tend to come from fish and flaxseed, depending on what form you get. But we are not consuming enough omega-3s, and actually our diets are very high in omega-6s because of the amount of not saturated fats, the amount of polyunsaturated fats that we're getting from seed oils that are hidden in our processed and ultra-processed foods. So yes, we need to reduce that. So we need to look at why we're eating these foods, what context we're eating them, because most of the foods that we're eating with this type of oil is ultra-processed, deep-fried food. And that leads to inflammation in the body, and this can increase risk of pre-diabetes, cardiovascular disease, because it's not just about high cholesterol. You have to understand where high cholesterol comes from and why heart disease comes into play to begin with. It's not just about cholesterol. Cholesterol can be good for you, and in fact, every single cell in your body has cholesterol in it, and it's basically acts like your scaffolding. Your brain cells are coated in cholesterol. Your hormones are made from cholesterol. Vitamin D is made from cholesterol. So cholesterol is not the culprit when it comes to heart disease, and actually it's become a bit of a scapegoat. We have to look deeper as to why your blood vessels are getting damaged. And if you've got fats that are that have been peroxidized, you have to look at whether these are causing damage to your blood cells, red blood cells, and also your blood vessels, and leading to various chronic disease problems, including heart disease, colon cancer, obesity, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance. Okay. There are some studies on that slide, so you can click that when you look at the recording and view the slides. So the level of oxidation is the real question. What sort of oils are more prone to oxidation? So we know that oils that have more oxidation are here. They're higher in linoleic acid, which is omega-6, and they are far more prone to oxidation, and they're very unstable. So that goes for sunflower seed, grapeseed oil. I don't think a lot of people use that in the UK. Corn oil, soybean oil. So these are very commonly used, especially in takeaways, like Indian takeaways, Chinese takeaways, especially in America as well. Cottonseed oil, canola oil is massively used. So that was actually, it was vegetable oils and canola oils were originally used as engine lubricant when we had the world wars. And after the world wars had finished, Canada, who produced canola oil, had so much of it they didn't know what to do with it, so they had to do something with it. So they turned it into a cooking oil by taking all flavor out of it, so you don't realize that you're just eating something that's not good for you. So actually, we need to be using oils that don't oxidize very well, and that includes palm. Olive oil can be really good, and I'll explain why. Avocado oil is great as well, but it's quite expensive, so it might not be accessible to everybody. This chart doesn't have any saturated fats on there, but ghee is a really great oil to use because it's saturated. Saturated fats are not as prone to oxidation as they are with polyunsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats will be these ones. So saturated fats like ghee, beef tallow, beef dripping, I think that's the same thing, duck fat, goose fat, these fats are actually far better for you to cook with because they're heat stable and they're not likely to break. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the cross section of your cell membrane. So every single cell in your body has a wall that looks like this. So this is just one part of the wall, like up here. So if you have healthy cell membranes, they should be a good combination of unsaturated and saturated fats, because that helps your cells communicate with one another and helps your cells take nutrients into your cells and also send out proteins to do various jobs. But if your diet is full of unsaturated fats, your cells can be too fluid and too wobbly. You need a combination of unsaturated fats and saturated fats to ensure that the structure of every single cell, imagine the skin cells that you have, they need to have a combination in order to be nice and solid and strong. Otherwise, if you have a diet that's full of unsaturated fats, you'll get very fluid cell membranes, which are very prone to oxidation and prone to damage. Anyone who has too much saturated fats, you'll get very rigid cells, and that means your communication might not be very good either. So you do have to have a balance, but choose wisely. This infographic from Dr. Kate Shanahan, which is an amazing doctor. I very much recommend her book called Dark Calories. And she talks about seed oils massively because she's done this. She's done research to show that from the 1960s, which is when seed oils became massively pushed in our modern day diets, because saturated fats like bacon fats or beef dripping and beef tallow were shunned basically, and now seed oils were pushed. And you can see that the trend also correlates with type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. However, there are going to be people on the internet and other nutritionists that totally disagree with this whole correlation, and they refuse to see the correlation. But yes, of course, we've got other things in our society that have also increased the risk of various diseases like pollution, pesticides, alcohol, stress levels, and also lack of sunlight. Palm oil. So palm oil is not all the same. So palm oil is another cheap oil that has been added to a lot of ultra-processed foods. And it's quite demonized because of the environmental aspect, because a lot of rainforests are cleared in order to make palm oil. And it's unfortunate that a lot of ecosystems are ruined and a lot of animals are displaced or even killed because of the mass farming of palm trees. So if you actually do a bit of research, you'll find that natural or very the traditional type of palm oil looks like this. It's very red, it's rich in flavor, it's rich in antioxidants and vitamins, and it's actually a very stable oil to cook with. However, this is not the palm oil that you'll find in most ultra processed foods. You'll actually find this type of oil, which is very highly refined. It's probably gone through lots of processes in order to get to that type of oil. And it's deplete in vitamin A and vitamin E. There's no vitamin E or A in those oils at all. Okay. So, and I'm talking about Skippy. Have you seen Skippy, the peanut butter? You'll find that there's a lot of palm oil in that product. So yeah, and you'll see some other peanut butter brands that actually commit to not using seed oils or palm oil at all. And not all olive oil is the same either. So here you can see a very nice healthy olive oil, which is nice and dark in a green color, and it's got lots of antioxidants in there, vitamins A and E, very spicy. It's you could tell that it's very healthy for you. But if you look on your left, we've got an olive oil that actually is highly refined, so it's gone through the manufacturing process to get it really refined, and it's cheap as hell, especially because it's been blended with rapeseed oil, and you've only got a portion of olive oil, but most of it is just this cheap rapeseed oil, which we know has undergone lots of industrial processes in order to get to where it is. So it's very easily oxidized. So yes, that ends that section on food, on seed oils, but big food companies always win. So I wanted to put this example in because it's so unjust. I think the whole food industry does not care about our health at all. There are fantastic brands out there, but the large majority do not bloody care about us, because look at the profits that Tesco made in 2024. They made £1,694,000,000 in profit. That's it for a moment, because 10 million adults and children in the UK struggle to put food on the table. How can it be that people are struggling to nourish themselves and are living in poverty in a developed country such as the UK, whilst Tesco make that much profit, and also farmers are being squeezed out of their own income so that Tesco and big food companies can all get so much money and profit, and all of their shareholders win? It's terrible. And that's why people are struggling. A good way to avoid UPFs, if you go into the supermarket, you'll find that most supermarkets are organized in a certain way, and actually you can avoid UPFs by not going in the ultra processed food aisle. So I quite like to just go to the fruits and vegetables, fresh meats and fish, Sometimes I get lots of veg. I sometimes get some things from the deli, maybe some dried food ingredients like grains or olive oils and various things like that. And then I walk out. I don't even go into the ultra processed drinks or foods or alcohol aisles because I don't need them. And actually, I do find that in previous occasions where I've had to buy lots of ultra processed foods for, say, for example, a party, I find that I spend um so much more money on ultra processed foods than fresh foods. So yeah, the keys takeaways. We can't always avoid ultra processed foods because often you will find that you have nothing else to eat. Most processed foods are fine. So what you need to do is minimize the amount of ultra processed foods. But if you can't avoid it at all, eating something is always better than nothing. Don't starve yourself. Make sure that you eat something. And eating ultra processed foods on occasion is unlikely to cause you any harm. Your body will process it. It's when your diet is mostly ultra processed foods and in your diet every single day, or if even a few times a week, that's when it impacts your body. So you have to make informed choices. And I do hope today has really helped you understand ultra processed foods in more depth. So that's that. So let's get into some questions. And I'm going to read out the questions that I got in the live webinar, because this is all recorded. So seed oils in plant milk. So plant milks such as Oatly, almond milk, been a hot topic. So yeah, plant milks are an ultra processed food, and we didn't even realize. We thought it was better for us and the planet. But say, for example, Oatly, they include rapeseed oil in their plant milks, their oats milk, but they argue that there's nothing wrong with rapeseed oil, and their nutritionists will argue it to the death and say that there's nothing wrong with them. And as we've seen in my slides, there is a lot of things wrong with seed oils. Not only that, in Oatly, they also have stabilizers and gums. And their oats are not just simply oats. They have gone through an enzymatic process that breaks down the oats to make them super, super creamy and also stops the oats from splitting when they're mixed with water. And that process actually makes the carbohydrates far more accessible to you and easier to break down into simple sugars, and therefore can impact your blood sugar. And that's where the whole blood sugar argument comes from. So in terms of plant milks, I don't personally consume them, but when I did, or I used to go for brands like Plenish and Rude Health because they're very much very clean milks, and they taste quite nice as well. So yeah, they don't use any nasty ingredients in those brands. I also like to go for organic soy milk. So soy milk is often, because it's quite high in um, protein, I like to say, is it protein and fat? The texture of the soybeans, they mix well with water and they don't really separate. And usually, if you look at a carton of organic soy milk, it will just be soy, water, and salt, and there's nothing else. So yeah, pick wisely. Second question, cold pressed oils. So that's a really good question. So cold pressed oils, are, say for example, cold pressed rapeseed oil. Is that a good cooking oil to cook with or not? Cold pressed is for sure better than your ultra refined vegetable oils and canola oil or rapeseed oil. So you can use those oils, but I don't think they're good for cooking anyway, because you've got the polyunsaturated fats and omega 6 content argument. These oils are still high in polyunsaturated fats, which are vulnerable to heat. So if you're cooking with them, they will still oxidize and cause various other problems in the body. So whereas if you've already had them refined, so the cheap refined vegetable or seed oils, they're already exposed to high heat, solvents, and bleaching, which also increase the rate of lipid peroxidation and actually causes other harmful chemicals like aldehydes and volatile organic compounds. You know, this is a whole topic. I could do a whole webinar on this, but they are not healthy for you. And cold press is certainly better, but unfortunately, they're not that great for cooking with either. You might be able to drizzle it on your salads, but I would say use extra virgin olive oil to drizzle on your salads over rapeseed oil if you want to do that for health purposes. I also had a question about extra virgin olive oil and whether you can cook with that. So that's debatable. A lot of people say no, but the Greeks and Italians have been doing it for centuries and they're just fine. So extra virgin olive oil, as you can see in the picture earlier, it's very rich in antioxidants, in vitamins A and E. And the vitamins actually protect the oil from oxidation and protects it from rupturing, right? Whereas if you looked at this oil, rapeseed actually naturally have lots of vitamin E and A. But the problem is with the process that has to undergo with the bleaching and the solvent extraction, the deodorizing, all of this actually strips away all the vitamin A and E, and they have to synthetically add vitamin E and A back into the oil, but it's not in high amounts at all because it's very colorless. So yeah, cooking with extra virgin olive oil is actually fine if you're cooking at low temperatures. I would argue I would never deep fry with, not that I do deep fry anything, but I would never use extra virgin olive oil to deep fry with. But I think sauteing in low temperatures, like stir frying, is actually fine. And you can drizzle that over your salads and vegetables fine as well, and it's a very great thing to add to your health. Um, but yes, what would I use to cook meat with? So I would use saturated fats. So if you're cooking at a high temperature, I would use saturated fats because saturated fats, as we can see previously, they don't oxidize as much as plant or seed oils, right? So they're much more stable. So that could be goose fat, duck fat, tallow. So if you're cooking doing your roast potatoes, 100% use goose fat, but don't use seed oils. Beef tallow. Did you know that McDonald's fries used to be fried in beef tallow and not seed oils? Now they're fried in sunflower oil or rapeseed oil. And look at where that's gotten us. So they used to be just like potato and that were fried in beef tallow. Um, So yeah, I would use those. Ghee is also a favorite of mine. Ghee is basically clarified butter. It's very accessible. You can make it yourself by just boiling away the milk solids in butter. I never use butter anymore to cook with because the milk solids in your butter can be quite easily burnt. So that increases compounds called, if you want to get into the science, they make inflammatory, oh, how do you say that word? Advanced age glycation end products. So they can cause inflammation in the body as well. So cooking with butter is not that great, but it's also better than using seed oils. But I usually use something like ghee. Ghee is something that comes from India. They've been using it for centuries and it's very healthy for you. They say it's very healthy for you and it's used in Ayurveda for medicinal purposes. So feel free to look into that if you are interested. Next question, gums, why are they bad? So gums, as I mentioned earlier, they're used to stabilize certain ultra-processed foods. They're used to thicken your products as well, so that your food products can stay on shelves for much longer and they don't change in formation. So if you baked your own cake and left it on the side for weeks, it would mold, it would go bad, right? But look at the cakes that are in on the supermarket shelves. They are filled with preservatives, gums, everything to keep that cake looking exactly the same from manufacturer date to how it looks several months later. And that's because of all the gums and preservatives. And actually, the gums can really mess with your microbiome. Do ultra-processed foods lead to acid reflux? Yes, because ultra-processed foods are full of ingredients that your body doesn't regularly recognize. If you've noticed that you feel really unwell and you feel really bloated when you've eaten an ultra-processed foods, that's because your body doesn't really recognize it, doesn't really know what to do with it, and it breaks it down very, very slowly. And it takes your body some time to get rid of it. So, of course, you would get acid reflux if you're susceptible because it doesn't, if you've eaten it very fast as well, it will hang about in your stomach for much longer, and that can cause increased risk of heartburn and acid reflux because it's not something that your body easily digests. Is bone broth good for your guts? Yes, because bone broth is full of L-glutamine. It's very collagen rich, full of all the essential amino acids that help to support your gut lining for repair. And how do you clean pesticides and herbicides off of your fruit and vegetables. So you can use running water, of course, but you can also put them in a bowl and mix some bicarbonate of soda and a bit of apple cider vinegar, and that should remove most of the pesticides and herbicides, especially if you can't afford to buy organic foods, because there are lots of organic foods, like, say, for example, blueberries and strawberries that are extortionately priced for what they are. But they do go bad very quickly if you haven't used that, if they haven't used pesticides and herbicides. So that's why they cost a lot more. But what you can do is buy normal, say, for example, locally grown blueberries, but use bicarbonate of soda and running water to get rid of the pesticides and herbicides, and that should help you. So I hope that was helpful. There was a lot of information there, so feel free to watch the replay over and over again. I have really enjoyed this topic because it's one of my favorite topics. I find it incredibly fascinating, but I do recommend further reading with the Ultra Processed People book. Feel free to message me on Instagram if you have any questions, and do give me some feedback. I'd love to create more long form content for you, so let me know what sorts of topics you'd like. And so, yeah, I will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining. See you later. Bye.